You know, every single time you click a link, you're putting your trust in a system you probably never even think about. But what if that system was lying to you? That's what we're talking about today. We're going to dive deep into this secret war for the internet's most critical and honestly, most vulnerable piece of infrastructure, the DNS.
All right, so for this breakdown, we're leaning on some really solid analysis from the security pros over at Samimi Network, Cloud DNS, and a few other cybersecurity researchers who've been digging into this.
Seriously, just think about that for a second. Every single website, every server out there, it has a specific address, right? So what if someone could secretly change those addresses? I mean, they could control exactly where you go online, everything you see, and even the data you hand over. And this isn't some sci-fi movie plot. This is real. It's the very core of what we call DNS warfare.
Okay, so to really get a grip on this fight, we've got to understand the battlefield itself. Let's start with the basics. What exactly is DNS, and why is it so darn important?
The easiest way to think about it is this. DNS is basically the internet's phone book. I mean, it's way easier for us to remember a name like google.com than a long string of numbers like 172.217.16.195, right? Well, DNS is the thing that does that translation for us, and it does it in a flash. Honestly, without it, the internet as we know it just wouldn't work. Every single thing you do online, from sending an email to watching this, it all starts with a DNS query.
All right, so if DNS is our phone book, then the first couple of attacks we're going to look at are all about messing with that book. We're talking about attackers who either try to steal someone's identity right out of the book or secretly scribble in a new malicious number.
So this first method is called name squatting, and it is really sneaky. Imagine someone just waltzing up to the phone company and saying, "Hey, you know Bob? Yeah, that's me now." And the phone company, without double-checking anything, just starts sending all of Bob's calls to this imposter. That's pretty much what's happening here.
So here's how it goes down. Your computer gets on the network and says, "Hi, I'm here and this is my name." But then an attacker on that very same network pops up and tells the DNS server, "Whoa, hold on, I'm that computer." The server, well, it gets confused. And suddenly all the data that was supposed to go to you, we're talking passwords, emails, everything, gets rerouted straight to the attacker. Just like that, they've stolen your digital identity.
Okay, so how in the world do you stop something like that? Well, thankfully, modern systems like Windows Server have a feature called name protection. And the way it works is pretty clever. It gives every device a totally unique digital fingerprint, which is called a DHCID. So if some other device tries to register the same name but it has a different DHCID, well, the server instantly knows something fishy is going on and just blocks the impersonator. Problem solved.
All right, next up we've got something called DNS cache poisoning. Now, if name squatting was about stealing an identity from the main phone book, cache poisoning is a little different. It's more like an attacker sneaking into your house and changing the number for bank in your personal address book. The big official phone book is still correct, but your local copy has been messed with, and that's all that matters. So this is how they pull it off. An attacker just bombards a DNS server with a storm of requests and fake answers. They just keep trying and trying until, eventually, they trick the server into accepting a fake IP address for a real website. And from that moment on, anyone using that server who thinks they're going to their banking site, well, they're actually being sent to a pixel-perfect fake completely controlled by the hacker. Yikes. The good news is, there are a couple of really solid defenses against this. And it all boils down to making the DNS server a lot more skeptical and way more unpredictable.
First up is a setting with a fantastic name. It's literally called Secure Cache Against Pollution. And when you flip this switch, the DNS server basically puts on its detective hat. It gets way stricter, it scrutinizes all the incoming data, and it's much, much more likely to just flat out reject any responses that don't look 100% legit. That alone stops most of these poisoning attempts in their track.
Now the second defense, the DNS socket pool, is, well, it's just brilliant. See, in the old days, servers used predictable ports for communication. You can think of them like numbered doors. Attackers knew exactly which door to listen at to shove their fake answer through at the right moment. But the socket pool changes the game completely. It randomizes the door for every single query. An attacker has no idea which of the thousands of doors the server is going to use, making it basically impossible to time their attack. Okay, so we've talked about deception. Now let's shift gears and look at the next class of attacks. These aren't about trickery. They're about pure, unadulterated brute force. The goal here is just to overwhelm and completely disable the DNS system.
First on the list is DNS client flooding. This is your classic denial of service or DOS attack. Let's go back to our phone company analogy. Imagine thousands of robocallers all dialing the phone company at the exact same time, but they're all asking for numbers that don't even exist. The operators get totally swamped looking for these phantom numbers, and pretty soon that can't answer any real calls from actual customers. A really common version of this is the NX domain attack, which does exactly that. It just hammers the server with requests for non-existent domains to burn through all its resources.
Next, we have DNS tunneling. And this one is probably one of the most sophisticated attacks out there. Here's the thing. Every network on the planet has to allow DNS traffic, otherwise the internet doesn't work. So firewalls almost never block it. And attackers know this. They exploit that trust by hiding their malicious data and commands inside of what looks like perfectly normal DNS traffic. They're essentially creating a secret encrypted tunnel that goes right through a company's main defenses.
So this is how it works. Malware on a victim's computer takes stolen data, breaks it down into tiny pieces, and then disguises those pieces as DNS lookups. You know, something like send-more-data.evildomain.com. These queries sail right through the firewall to the attacker's server, which then collects all the pieces and puts the stolen data back together. It's brilliant in a terrifying way. It's like building a secret backdoor that uses the building's main entrance.
And finally, we have DDoS amplification. Now, this is a nasty two-part attack. The DDoS part, well, that just means distributed denial of service, overwhelming a target with traffic. But the amplification part is the really clever and destructive bit. An attacker sends a really small request to a public DNS server, but they lie about where it came from. They spoof the return address, making it look like the request came from their intended victim.
Now the server, just trying to do its job, sends back a response. But here's the trick. The response is often 10 times larger than the initial request, sometimes way more. So the attacker sends out thousands of these tiny little requests from all over the globe, and all of these huge, amplified responses get funneled directly at one poor, unsuspecting victim. They just get flooded with so much data that their internet connection completely collapses. The DNS server itself becomes an unwitting weapon in the attack.
And look, this isn't just stuff you read about in a textbook. These kinds of attacks have been behind some of the biggest, most disruptive internet outages in history. We're talking about real damage with very real-world consequences.
Let's just look at a few examples. Back in 2008, the famous Kaminsky vulnerability exposed such a deep flaw in DNS that it forced a massive global security upgrade called DNSSEC. Then, in 2016, you had the Dyn attack, which used a huge network of hacked smart devices, like cameras and DVRs, to take down giants like Twitter and Netflix for most of a day. And as recently as 2020, DDoS attacks against the New Zealand Stock Exchange were so bad they had to literally stop all trading for days.
So you can see the stakes here are incredibly high. A successful DNS attack isn't just a technical problem. It leads directly to massive data breaches, total business disruption, sometimes irreversible damage to a company's reputation, and of course, just staggering financial losses.
So when you boil it all down, it really comes back to this one question. We place our trust, really our entire digital lives, in this invisible system. But as the attacks get smarter and the stakes just keep getting higher, this secret battle for the internet's phone book is nowhere near over. And it really forces us to ask a tough question. In a world that's built on digital trust, who exactly is guarding the guards?
Hey, if you found this breakdown helpful, hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel really is a huge help for us. It lets us keep making more explainers on these critical topics that are shaping our digital world. So, thanks for your support.